to introduce Cynthia. As I said, I don't give a lot of bio information, but I did just learn something very interesting. She is a graduate of the University of Virginia, and in fact from the Architectural History program. And I learned last night that that program wouldn't have existed if it wouldn't be for our speaker tomorrow, who was the first graduate of that program, right, Brown? And he will tell you he graduated first in his class. He was the only graduate. Oh, I didn't need to add that, okay. All right. Cynthia came to Philadelphia in 2008, and she hit the ground running. There is absolutely no doubt that programs that were already partially underway were going to get completed. Some of them that were controversial got completed. We had the President's House, which we will see and talk about tomorrow, was completed. One interesting project that I was very interested in, the Germantown White House, the Deschler-Morris House. Back in a little over 35 years ago, we restored that building, and it needed restoring again, not, I hope, because we didn't do it well, but I hope it's a lesson that preservation is not a one-time fix-it-all. Preservation is, in fact, an ongoing process, and we have to realize that. But the Carpenters Company has always been fortunate. Since Charlie Peterson was on the other side of the fence, when Charlie Peterson was with the National Park Service, he negotiated a rather unique agreement between the Carpenters Company, the oldest extant trade guild in America, a privately held institution maintaining Carpenters Hall, that they would remain a privately held institution while the National Park would take over all the landing ground around it. An incredible relationship. I sometimes quip, and I told Peter Jennings this when he was down to research a book he unfortunately was never able to finish. I had made this snide comment that, well, we sometimes feel like we're the epitome of free enterprise in America. We're privately held but surrounded by the federal government. But the truth of it is, what an incredible relationship we have, and how fortunate we are with Cynthia and her entire staff. It's, in my opinion, the working together and helping each other is something that is a vital, vital lesson for us in America today. Government can help and be a vital partner with all of us. We just have to find the right way to do that. Now, Cynthia is going to talk to us about the past, present, and hopefully the future of tax possibilities. But I want to suggest that Cynthia, in having worked with her on these programs, Cynthia is the epitome of how we can work together, government, private enterprise. So, Cynthia, thank you.
Well, good morning. I feel like I'm in great company, and Charlie, you really are too much with your introductions. When we were talking about this Preserving America program, we thought, and it wasn't even my idea, but needed to talk about the tax incentive program because it's had a huge impact. Individual initiative, all the wonderful projects that have gone on since Pamela Cunningham first worked on Mount Vernon in 1859, have preserved much of America, but it got a huge ramp up in the late 70s with the tax incentive program. Since the program began in 1977, as you see, over $58 billion has been invested in 37,300 projects. I actually thought it was more than that. I worked in the tax incentive program from 1980 to 1990, and it seemed like I did that many myself. And I have colleagues in the room I know who worked on this program. It was fast and furious, wasn't it? Both at the state level and at the federal level. It's been a huge boon for housing units, particularly in major cities and particularly in underappreciated neighborhoods, I would say. It made historic preservation, people have said, more than an historic house or monument concern. It's been dubbed the democratization of the movement. And I must say that not everyone thinks that the results are 100% positive. Because they are rehabilitations, as John was saying, there are all these different kinds of preservation projects, from restoration to rehabilitation and even that word adaptive use. The charge is that the building must be an historic building. The rehabilitation must preserve the historic character of the building. But that leaves a lot of room for judgment. I thought I would, let's see, so private sector investment has been steered to historic structures. I think that's a very important point. And here in Philadelphia, of course, that was too late for buildings like the Gimbel's department store building. I never saw that, but I mourn the loss of it and the empty space on Market Street. But it was in time for the Litt Brothers building that was struggling to find economic viability. It was in time for the Wanamaker building and a host of others, big and small, in Philadelphia. So I'm going to show you a range of buildings with new uses. In some ways, it's almost a stealth program. As I was looking at various examples, there are lots of buildings in Philadelphia that you would never know received the benefit of this 20% tax credit. And it being a credit is a big deal for lots of investors. We all know we drive social policy with our tax code. The mortgage is a deduction, right? The interest on your mortgage is a deduction, so that it's a tax credit. It's substantial amounts of money. It's driven substantial investment. This is Fort Baker, which is actually part of Golden Gate National Recreation Area in Sausalito. It was an historic Army port near the Marin Headlands, wonderful real estate, always owned by the federal government. There was a partnership that was set up. This is actually a great example of integration of historic preservation, modern amenities, and green performance. $40 million of private investment here. The 20% credit can be syndicated through partnerships or long-term lessees. That's why you'll see actually some churches or some government-owned buildings have been subject to these rehab projects, combined with state incentives in many instances. A phenomenally successful program. It saves buildings, it increases property values, promotes investment, creates jobs. Created a job for me. Stimulates other rehabilitation projects. Success does breed success. Revitalized smaller towns and Main Street communities. Here's a project in New York, $2.1 million rehab costs. Somebody got a credit of $420,000 that you can carry backward or forward if you can't take it all in 1 year. It's really a very friendly credit. Sears Roebuck and Company Powerhouse in Chicago. Again, this is a redundant, as they say, 20th century building, 55-acre site. The latest part of the project involves converting the powerhouse into a technology and learning center, part of a charter high school. It's in a economically disadvantaged neighborhood, but this is literally a beacon for reinvestment and renewed life. It's a $31 million project. They were careful to keep the open spaces inside there. Closer to home, we've got the Fodderel building here in Old City. It's an important building of example of Greek Revival commercial style architecture you may have never seen before. We've got a lot of these, but that's what I mean by the democratization of the preservation movement. Here, it was built in 1925 as a warehouse with some retail. Was depicted in a panorama from 1860. I don't know if you can see that or not. The owners used the federal tax credits in 2009 to convert it to an apartment building with retail on the ground floor. It's got that cool opening through to the back that was preserved. I would say that was a character-defining feature that needed to be preserved. The main branch of the post office here in Philadelphia, $231 million investment. That's a staggering number. Just recently completed. You all may have remembered seeing it in the news. Character-defining features retained, particularly the Postal Service lobby. And it currently houses the IRS. Hotel Palomar. Again, I'm sure you all, those of you architecturally connected in Philadelphia, recognize this as having been the Architects Building in Philadelphia, 24-story Art Deco office tower from 1931. Kimpton Hotels purchased it and converted it into a boutique hotel with 230 rooms, investment of over $50 million, completed in 2009. Then on the other coast, Ford Motor Company assembly plant has been rehabilitated, respecting the original passive solar design. The owners successfully, in this one again, integrated contemporary applications of green performance and sustainability. Just thought I'd show you some random details that do get preserved, even restored in these tax incentive projects. As I said, some of the rehabilitations have been controversial. I know I've heard that said about the Wanamaker building in Philadelphia and some other ones, that it was too bad that so much had to be compromised. But in many cases, we have seen wonderful restoration work. PSFS, I think we might hear some more about this later on in Philadelphia. Was a bank, now is a hotel. Again, I've heard some people regret some of the changes there, but the building is still there as a landmark for all of us. Entire historic districts are benefiting. This is nearby in Salem, New Jersey. These buildings were in really deplorable condition and are now back in service, contributing to the statement that the tax incentive program is the most effective federal program to promote community revitalization in some of the most downtrodden and disinvested neighborhoods. Here's another one from Springfield, Massachusetts. And you've all driven through cities, you know these buildings are everywhere. And really thanks to the tax incentive program, they have been put into healthy condition and put in continued use. Kentucky, Baltimore, Maryland. And I think we've gotten more sophisticated about defining historic character and knowing what is possible in these buildings. And the quality of the rehabilitation projects has improved from some time in the 90s, 80s, when may not have been as careful to preserve everything that we might be able to. Repair rather than replace, cardinal rule of the Secretary's standards. Window trim and plaster, in this case, character-defining features. Nice restoration work. They may have dropped ceilings in another part of the building, but they were careful in the parlor to do a good job. Retain historic materials and features. Retain the historic character. The open plan was very important for this office. Previously a printing plant, but able to be adapted as an office. Compatible treatments. Windows This is just one of any number of pictures of windows. They are probably the most troublesome, frequently troublesome issue. The industry response has been to provide products that better meet insulation needs and retain the historic character of a building. Thought I'd conclude with a slide about Pennsylvania, ranked 11th in the nation with 21 approved Part 2 applications for last fiscal year. Ranked 4th in the nation, $220 million approved for the tax credit program just in 2010. Well, I think it got the big boost from the post office building. So this is countrywide, $3.42 billion invested. And then the number of housing units is very significant with over 13,000. So public policy does drive behavior. I think this has overall been a fantastic investment that the private sector has made, and it really has helped preserve the warp and weft of many parts of our country. Thanks.